who am I really? Like if I shed all these layers of stuff that society puts on me or family has put on me, or just growing up and ideas that I have about myself, if I shed all that, what's left? Who am I at the core?
Hello and welcome to Self-Talk. I'm Rachel Astarte. Michelle Woods is a midlife design coach and the owner of Woods Life Coaching. As a midlife design coach, she helps women past 40 years old, stuck in midlife misery, stop fantasizing about a life they wanted in the past and start living fulfilled today. Thank you, Michelle, for being on Self-Talk.
Thank you for having me.
So I would love to know, and of course, this is as a post-40 woman, this is definitely a wonderful topic, and I don't think a lot of people really talk about it as much as they should. And so I'm curious, from your journey, how did you come to this particular niche in coaching?
That's a great question. I think it's rooted in my own story, and my story really begins when I was a young girl, high schooler who was super focused and driven to go after a career that I thought I would love, which was to live and work internationally. And that dream took me into my 20s and really into my late 20s. But in that process, life did not go in that direction. And I was married super young, married at 20, and married an amazing, amazing man. And I kind of had to put my dreams and my goals in a closet, essentially, because that wasn't something that we shared, and I didn't realize it at the time. And by doing that, I just created a whirlwind of emotions and frustrations, and ended up blooming into resentment and anger. And that pushed me into making some really bad choices that almost ruined my marriage. And upon, reflection and kind of reconciliation, I had to get really honest with myself about who I was and who I wanted to be. And in that process, had to see what I needed to let go. And that process of letting go led me on a different journey of self-discovery. And in that, I, parallel to that in my career, I was a teacher, and I was doing a lot of coaching at the time, and I had an opportunity to go get certified as a leadership coach. And while doing that actually took me on a different spiritual journey. And in all of that, realized that coaching was really the place for me. That was where my own purpose was, and where I found like enormous fulfillment, and have had my own coaching business for the past 5 years. And in that, realizing that my business, who I am is an extension into my business. And so that's kind of where I land with women that are post 40 that are really stuck, fantasizing, but also daydreaming and just having that wishful thought of something more and something different, but they don't really know how to get there, not brave enough to take that next step. And so my coaching really centers around helping those women figure out what that is, what fulfillment is, and helping them move forward to get it.
Yeah. And the reason you focused on women in or approaching midlife is what's the element there that really appeals to you?
I think when you get to a certain age, there's less attachment. And I really feel like that 40 is approaching that less attachment. So you're less attached to your original career goal. You're less attached to, child rearing and making sure that diapers are changed and babies are fed.
Yeah.
You kind of get to a place where you're open to the possibility that there's something different or something could be better. And that transition period, I really feel like, and I experienced it myself. So, going into that 40s and beyond, I think women are just more willing to experiment and try something new.
Yeah. And I know so many women have a midlife career change. And there is something to be said for that. When you move past that time of, we have our roles, those of us who have chosen to be mothers. Yeah. That's what you do, because that's an important job. We're not raising children, we're raising human beings, grownups, So what is so interesting is that at that point of turning, say, 40 or in that range, that we decide it's okay to look at something different for our lives, to find a different path for our lives. So the question becomes, I've talked to a lot of women in this position. They feel like they're too old to start something new. And I'm sure you've heard this a lot. How do you address that feeling?
I think it's a limitation that we put on ourselves. That's not true. So, I start to wonder, where does that thought, where is that rooted? Who puts that on you? Is that society? Is it social media? Like, who in the world gets to determine how old I am, or like what I can do at a certain age? And so there's plenty of examples of women all around us that are getting after it, that are not slowing down, that are really just trying to find what happiness means to them. And my other response to that is, why would we give up the opportunity to be fully happy, to be 100% fulfilled?
Yeah.
Because of an age.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. It almost seems like the age is, I hate to put it so bluntly, like an excuse. There's something else holding us back. And I'm sure that's what you really get into, I'm guessing, with your coaching clients, is what's really holding you back. Because it's not necessarily the age thing. But I want to stick with that for a second, because we all deal with it. So I started my life very old. I mean, I was born old. I was born a 40-year-old woman. No, I had my son at 40. So my life got condensed really quickly. So I started at 40 as a new mother, and then immediately went into perimenopause. You know what I mean? So I didn't have time to, enjoy it. And then I started a new career at 45. So I know exactly what you're talking about. And that societal pressure to be a certain way. I was the older mom at the preschool, and I still am. And, he's in middle school now. So to get used to shifting how we see ourselves in society, how can we do that? That's a big ask, I know. So we'll jump right into the big questions, but how can women start to see themselves as unique and powerful, and sort of push against the pressures of society?
I think there has to be a willingness to be daring, into take the first step into what it means to be daring and to live wholeheartedly. And we have to explore and have some awareness around what holds us back. What are the limitations? And what are we comparing ourselves to? And how come we're not wholly us in what that means? And I take clients through a process of really digging into that and understanding, okay, who am I really? Like, if I shed all these layers of stuff that society puts on me, or family has put on me, or just growing up and ideas that I have about myself, if I shed all that, what's left? Who am I at the core? And then how do then we move forward from that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So there's also something to be said, and that's a lot of work,
Oh
right?
yeah,
That's a lot of work.
absolutely.
And
It
and
is.
and it does, it can be very scary.
Mm-hmm.
You just asked such a huge question. Who am I if I don't have all of what my family told me I am, my teachers told me I am, my coaches told me I am, my whatever, society.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I like to think that, there's a pretty amazing person there that you haven't met yet or who's been there, but you haven't really let come out and play. But there's another element to it. And I wonder if you could speak to this. There is something to be said about older women coming into their power. And what do you think older women offer society?
Oh my gosh, so much experience,
Mm-hmm.
so much love and compassion. I think that experience of going through life and having seen things and experienced it in their own way there's so much value to that. And helping women see how much value they have is enormously just inspiring to see, to experience and I loved how you said it, when they step into their power and when they just begin to own it and let all the other shit go and just be in the flow. Oh man, that is extremely exciting. Yes.
Yeah. I saw you light right up as soon as I said, oh yes, let's talk about that. Because it's really true. We don't realize, and especially because as we're growing up, women are told, sure, you can be whatever you want to be. Thanks to the women's movement, you can be whatever you want to be. But we're still given the message that you have to look a certain way. You have to talk a certain way. You have to present yourself. And you can have certain careers that, you have to work harder. Like it's easier for women to fall into healthcare, teaching, those kinds of things. But if you want to do something like, construction, or you want to do things that are male, typically male, we have to work harder. And to some extent, in certain other careers, we do as well. You're working in finance, women have to work harder, and that's exhausting. And so what I love about what you're saying is that when you throw all that stuff away, all that information, all that programming away, and you step in and realize how much you actually have to offer just by having lived your life, then women sort of transition into being mentors and elders eventually of the community, because they have so much to say and to offer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's so much value in women that embrace that role or embrace that opportunity. It doesn't really have to be a role, that might be too strong, but just the opportunity that what your life experience has given you, what you've lived through, what you continue to work on in yourself, is an opportunity to be someone for your community members.
Yeah. So I can hear, I can hear my listeners right now going like, well, that sounds lovely. How do I start? What do I do? It's like, when you started the episode today, you're talking about, fantasizing or daydreaming about a life for yourself. And maybe that's where some of these listeners are. What's the next step from getting out of this and making it a reality?
I think the next step is identifying where those limitations really sit. And I know from myself, like something simple that I've recently discovered on my own, or discovered about myself, is that I know that I have gifts for speaking. I know that, and I've been doing some human design work recently. And so I know that about myself. But what I realized is that when I was younger, I had this idea that if I spoke and shared my opinion, that I was annoying, that no one wanted to hear my opinion all the time. And reflecting on that, I see how that has limited what I have done as an adult, because I don't want to share my opinion all the time. Right. I don't want to respond all the time, because I don't know how, I don't want people to feel a certain kind of way towards me. Right. So that limitation has seen that limitation has allowed me to let that go.
Okay.
And to then turn that into what my true power is, and how, like understanding how I step into that. And so the same goes for my clients is, okay, what's the thing? What's the bucket we're talking about? Are we talking about their role? Are we talking about career? Are we talking about relationships? Whatever that one thing is, let's narrow it down. And let's now dig into, well, what are the limitations? What are the things that we need to let go in order to step into the flow and, let life take us in the direction we want to go.
Right. Beautiful. From your experience, what are some common limitations that you hear women have?
They're so much simpler than I think what we, originally think about. So, I had a client who was a business owner, and she really wanted to like figure out the balance. Right. And so what we discovered, or what she discovered, is that her limitation was simply in her schedule. And she wasn't allowing herself the opportunity to create a simple schedule for her week that gave her structured time around her personal self-care, her work schedule, and then any other obligation she had. So simply just sitting down with her and creating a calendar with her for a week's worth of time allowed her to see that she had limited herself into thinking she didn't need that, but then it was creating like a bunch of chaos in her life.
Sure.
Another example was a client who was trying to figure out a career switch for herself. And she didn't tell me until like over a month into our coaching relationship that she was a painter, and she had put all of her painting away, and that she hadn't tapped into that in a really long time.
Wow.
And what she discovered was that she had limited her creativity and her ability to tap into her intuition because that all stemmed from her painting. And so that limitation, once she identified it and just reintroduced painting into her life again, really helped her blossom her intuition, and helped her really tap into some career choices that she needed to make.
Wow.
So it's all different, but I think it's sometimes a whole lot simpler than we kind of go into it thinking.
Right. So it's not always about like deep psychological trauma. It's about,
right.
I didn't make a schedule. I need to make a
right.
schedule.
Right. Simple things.
Yeah. And oftentimes we look over those simple things and just gloss over them. And we think, no, it can't be that. It's got to be something else. It feels deeper and more serious than that, because the results are the same. You're not achieving what you're capable of achieving and sometimes it's just a tiny little bump in the road. It's not necessarily a big wall that you have to get over. Yeah, that's beautiful. And go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to say, my hope always is that whatever my clients learn about, whatever structure that they see might have been missing, or whatever limitation that they are able to unlock, that beyond our coaching relationship, they're able to apply that same way of thinking about it into other areas, so that they can, be empowered to do that work on their own as well.
Right. And that's how coaching is good, because it's the same formula applies everywhere in your life. That's beautiful. And that's great. So how might you coach around self-doubt? Because that's a big one that comes up. It's certainly in therapy, and I'm sure in coaching as well, that, I want to do this. I see what the problem is. I logically get it, but I don't feel like I can make the step. So like, I'll give you the hypothetical of your painter client who says, oh yeah, I was good, but now I suck. And so because I don't have that creative edge anymore. If I got all my painting stuff out now, it would just make me sad. It wouldn't help me to do what I think you believe I can do. I don't think I can do it. How do you coach around that?
Yeah. And honestly, I have a lot of intake calls where that it is the confidence, like I want confidence in this specific area. Well, the process for coaching, and specifically the way I coach, is allowing the client to lead the conversation,
Mhm.
and then asking really great questions that help them dig a little deeper.
Mhm.
So the process of, if a client comes in and they say, my intention today is to have more confidence around this, then my next question is going to be, well, how do you define it? What does that mean for you?
Mhm.
What is, what if you could imagine that situation where you are completely confident and you're getting out of it what you want? Like, help me envision that. Help me understand what that feels like. And the way I coach is helping the clients get out of their head and really into their heart center, and understanding what that feels like. How do you imagine that? How do you, eventually, what's the new belief that we need to carry, need to hold, so that we can manifest the thing that we want. And so that process might not be able to get done in one 60-minute coaching conversation, but over the course of some time, helping them really dig into that, and helping them see what are my beliefs around it, and how are those beliefs affecting or creating actions.
Right.
And if we need to backtrack, okay, then what is that belief?
Okay.
Is that something you still want to carry, or is that something you want to let go?
Yeah. Oh, I want to let go. I just don't know how, And then it's like, so then you have to just kind of go back and undo all of whatever that, that voice, it sounds like is part of the limiting belief part,
Absolutely.
I want to do it, but I can't. Well, who said that? Where you, so really
I say, like, following the thread. Follow the thread. Where does it go? What is it attached to?
Right on.
Where do we need to cut it? Where it no longer fits, where it no longer serves us.
Right. Yeah. And support is important too. I think you talk about that. I believe it was on your website, but how important it is to, one of your blog entries, I think, was about how important it is to have like-minded people around you, so that you're constantly being elevated.
Absolutely.
But that leads to another thing that I'd love to talk about, which I hear a lot, and I'm sure you do too, is the comparison trap. Oh, women my age are doing this, or someone who's in my field is this far ahead of me and she's 10 years younger. How do we work with the comparison trap?
Yeah, I'm guilty. I fall into that as well. And find myself digging out of that on a regular basis, I think.
Well, we're human.
Yeah, exactly. It really becomes a matter of self-awareness and understanding when the trap is set, and when we find ourselves in that space. I know from my own personal journey, really getting into what the human design experience is, and how my own, and this applies to everybody, how my own DNA has created who I am. And I am unique, and I am one of a kind. And so understanding that about myself, I can't compare what I'm doing to others, because that's never going to match. And so my role, and then my job for myself and for my clients, is to help. Okay, so what is the perfect fit, and how we really, I help clients tap into intuition, and build that intuition up, so that we have a place that we can go to and say, okay, is this really for me? Or am I comparing myself?
Right.
And I think we have a litmus test of, is it uplifting? Is it raising our consciousness, or is it doing the opposite? And we find ourselves depressed by it, or, and so there's an easy litmus test to determine if we are, and what we need to do to get out of it.
Yeah. And we can feel it in our bodies. It's just like, oh, versus, oh yeah, that feels good. That right. So it's beautiful to be able to use your body as a resource that way too, and really start trusting it and listening to it.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. So how can people find you, Michelle?
The easiest place to find me is through my website, which is Woods Life Coaching. I can also be reached. I'm on social media, Instagram, mostly Instagram, not a whole lot of Facebook, but you can also find me at Woods Life Coaching. And then my email is michelle@woodslifecoaching.com.
Okay, beautiful. And I understand you have a little giveaway gift for our listeners today.
Yeah, absolutely. So if anyone's interested, I have a self-discovery journal prompt exercise, tapping into my education background. There's also an activity that's attached to it. So if anyone's interested, then they can just use the link that's going to be in the show notes, and I will send that out to you.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Michelle Woods. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you so much for having me.